Here on the Rural Radio Network, I'm Joe Gangwish with the first Vice President of the Nebraska Farm Bureau. That is Mark McHargue. We're here at convention at La Vista for 2015. And Mark, as we get things ramped up, you got a lot of livestock issues to talk about, so kind of hit on the big ones.
Yeah, as we one of our goals for Nebraska Farm Bureau is to grow livestock. I mean, it's just important that we do that. One of the ways I think that we can do that, which we have current policy on, is that we lift the ban on packers owning hogs in Nebraska. And so we're going to continue to push that legislation through that appears is going to be coming and be talking about that and how that would affect Nebraska and how that would help grow livestock in Nebraska.
Let's expand a little bit on that. A lot of people coming out, of course, against that. So you have pros and cons on both sides. But what's going to be the advantage of having packer ownership?
Well, the advantage of packer ownership is that we are the only state that has not lifted that ban. So when we look at a competitive nature within livestock, all the states around us do not have that ban. A lot of those states are growing, especially in the hog industry, faster than we are. So if you reduce it down to what's the limiting factor that maybe it needs to be changed, this is the one issue.
And you're a pork producer, so you know better than anybody else how something like this can help.
Right, and I'm actually an independent pork producer. We raise all of our own feed. We own all our own hogs. But from a big picture leadership standpoint of Nebraska, this is something that we need to do that I don't think will change the face of Nebraska livestock per se. But if it can take a hurdle, say if a producer wants to contract feed, he has maybe 4 people he could go to, 5 people. Well, maybe he would have 8 or 9 people that he could go to competitively bid for his facilities that he owns to raise hogs there.
National policy issue. Let's talk about mandatory country of origin labeling. So this looks like it could be a big week for that.
Yeah, it could. Canada and Mexico are going to put retaliations in effect. We'll find out, I believe, sometime this week what that number may be. We need to look at our policy, and currently American Farm Bureau policy is that we support a complete repeal. We're going to probably talk about as Nebraska whether that's something that we support or if there's some voluntary factor that we want to put in there. Obviously,
you mentioned you'd like the full repeal, but can you work with something if it does become voluntary?
I think we're in favor of having packers and people that sell this meat to have a voluntary label. I think that's very important because they're proud of us selling U.S. products. It's how you go about that, whether you put that voluntary in statute or not, and some of the details there that really probably start hanging a few people up. So,
give us a quick comment on, there's been a lot of discussion about antibiotics in meat here lately, even USDA making some comments. As a pork producer, how do you battle those kind of comments?
Well, first of all, I think the fact that we're putting antibiotics in the feed for what some people would say would be growth promotant issues, I think that's realistic to take those out. The new feed directive will take that out. One of the things I'm concerned about as a livestock producer is allowing the vet to prescribe certain antibiotics that he thinks would be effective for a specific case that we're dealing with within our barns. With the new feed directive, it's going to take away some of that flexibility that a veterinarian may have, and so we're going to introduce some potential resolution that would speak to that, maybe loosen that up a bit. That's probably one of the main sticking points.
All right, before we let you off the hook here, Mark, let's talk about the Matrix Committee that was formed by the Department of Ag. How's that coming along, and talk about your role in that?
Yeah, the Matrix is coming along well. We've met probably 3 times. We have another meeting next week. So this thing is moving along fairly quickly. We want to get a pretty good, solid, rough draft and maybe actually be able to float it out to some counties and really have all the ag groups kind of take a look at it once we get it together before we move it on to Director Greg Ibaugh's desk. And so we really need to continue to work on it, but it's been very interesting. I think the committee is very a knowledgeable understanding of all aspects of this, and so it's been a pretty exciting committee to be a part of, and I think we're going to come out with some pretty good piece of not legislation but a tool to use.
Mark McHargue, he's first vice president for the Nebraska Farm Bureau. We're here at Convention 2015 going on in La Vista. I'm Joe Gangwish for the Rural Radio Network.